Hello friends and welcome back to Chess with Konstantin. In today's lesson we are going to be discussing the fundamentals of chess tactics. So first of all, what is a chess tactic? Well, a chess tactic or a chess combination is a sequence of moves that forces your opponent to either be checkmated or to lose material advantage, that is, to lose one or more pawns and or one or more pieces. So how do you go about actually doing these chess tactics or chess combinations? Well, the most common idea behind any kind of chess combination is the principle of double threat or double attack. So just as it sounds like, a double threat or a double attack is a move that threatens to do multiple things at the same time, usually two, sometimes even three things. So in this position with white to move, please go ahead and pause the video and give yourself about 30 seconds to a minute and see if you can find the correct idea that wins this game for white. Welcome back. If you found it, good job. If you just want to enjoy the video, the correct move here is queen to a4. This move gets the queen out and attacks black's piece. So far so good. So you can see that the knight on the edge of the board here is doing quite terribly, and the knight actually has nowhere to run. So if the knight obviously goes to any of these squares, it will be captured by one of the pawns or a piece, and black is forced to defend this knight. So the only move for black here is pawn to b6, defending this knight. And now comes the crowning achievement of this combination and the idea behind queen a4, and that is queen to e4. Notice that this move does multiple things. So first of all, the move threatens checkmate immediately on h7. So if black does nothing, then in the next move white will checkmate the black's king. There are multiple ways to defend this checkmate. Obviously black can play pawn to g6 or pawn to f5, but the move does more than just threaten checkmate. Obviously, besides the checkmate, there is also the threat of the double attack on this bishop on e7. And so no matter what black does, he will lose the game now. Either he will be checkmated, or if, for example, f5 is played, attacking the queen, then simply queen takes e7, and after queen takes e7 and rook takes e7, if you notice, white is up an entire piece, and this is a completely decisive advantage. Obviously, if you're a piece up, you should be able to just trade off all your pieces and win in the endgame. So through the principle of double attack, the white piece, the player with the white pieces, was able to achieve a decisive advantage with this idea of queen to a4 and queen to e4. In your own games, especially as you get to play stronger and stronger opponents, things are not going to be quite this simple all the time. So let's look at a much more complex example that also uses the principle of double threat or double attack, but also incorporates some other themes in a much more complex position. So take a look at this position. It is black to move now, and if you just count the pieces, which most people do most beginners do when they try to evaluate who is better, you will notice that black is actually down a pawn here. So black has 3 pieces and 6 pawns, and white actually is a pawn up. So white has 7 pawns. So an amateur, somebody who doesn't understand much in positional play and doesn't see very many tactics, will say that here white is winning because white is up a pawn. But you know, it's not that simple. So first of all, it's black to move, so black can just recapture the pawn. But black has a much better move here. And the much better move here is, believe it or not, bishop to a3. Now the move bishop a3, it looks like it's a bishop sacrifice. Alright, obviously the pawn can take it. But obviously taking the bishop is going to lead to a very rapid checkmate. So if b takes a3, then simply queen takes a3, and it's actually a checkmate now already. So taking is not possible. So what can white do? Well, if white captures the queen with the idea that there will be no threats with queen to a3 if the queens are captured, can you now pause the video and find the correct sequence of moves that will win this game for black? Go ahead and hit pause and give yourself about 15 seconds. So welcome back. The correct response is not recapturing the queen, but bishop takes b2 check. So here the king has to move. King can capture the bishop because it is protected by the rook. So the only move is king to b1. So then black can move the bishop back and forth and grab a lot of material while paralyzing the white's king. So the next move is bishop takes c3 with check. The check is not from the bishop, obviously, but it is a discovered check from the rook. There's only one square. Well, okay, he could sacrifice the queen to block the check, but really there is only one move here, and that is king to c1. Then the bishop checks again to gain another tempo. So the king comes back to b1. Then you have the move bishop a3 check. And notice that the bishop is now attacking the queen. So here white can try to block this bishop to b4, blocking the threat. But now not bishop takes b4, but actually rook takes b4 with check. And now there's really not much to be done here. So white can simply capture this rook, and as a result, if queen takes rook and bishop takes rook, then if you count the material, actually black has these two bishops for a rook, and then a bishop for a knight, and actually two bishops versus a rook, or two minor pieces versus a rook, is actually a decisive winning advantage. So we will cover that later in our endgame course, in my endgame course. But you should know that two minor pieces versus a rook is going to win you the game most of the time. So that is the best move, but obviously white can also play king to a1, and then black can force the exchange by simply playing rook b1 check, and after king takes b1, then just capture the queen, and we have two minor pieces for a rook. Obviously you have to know what you're doing in the endgame, but this is a win it should be a win for black. So let's go back. So after this move bishop to a3, it's not really possible to capture the queen. So what can white do here? Well, besides capturing the queen, another idea is to play knight to a4. This move protects this b2 square, but what will you do as black here? Well, as a dark squared player, you should not be afraid to capture this pawn anyway. Obviously the king cannot take the bishop, so the knight takes. And now can you pause the video and find the correct move here for black? It shouldn't be too difficult. I'll give you a few seconds. So welcome back. As the dark squared player here, you should utilize the principle of double threat or double attack that we've just talked about and play queen to a3. This move threatens checkmate by capturing the knight on b2, but also threatens a checkmate in two moves after queen takes a2 followed by a mate on a1. So there's a double threat here, a mate in 2 and a mate in 1. So obviously the mate in 1 has to be defended first. So there's only really one way in which white can defend this mate in 1. Obviously bishop to c3 doesn't work because it just gives you a free piece. Black will just capture this piece immediately. So the only defense here is to play queen to e5. This defends the mate in one move, and here black shouldn't hurry too much because this move allows you to gain tempo. So the correct continuation here is rook to e8, attacking this queen, forcing the queen to run. The queen could go to either d4 or c3. And for example, if it runs to d4, it makes no difference because you just push the pawn, attacking the queen again. And if the queen goes to c3, threatening to trade queens, then black will continue with the idea of mate in 2 and capture this pawn on a2. So now the threat is checkmate, and it's not obvious how that threat could really be captured. So how do you defend this? Well, one way to defend is to give your king an escape square. And the only real way the white's king can run away here is to go to d2. So this bishop has to move. The bishop has two squares where it can move. If the bishop moves to e3, that's pretty bad because simply the rook can take on e3 and it will be given away a piece. So the only way white can try for a win here is to play bishop to e1, giving you an escape square. So can you now pause the video and find the correct move that will checkmate white's king in a few moves here? I'll give you a hint. It does involve continuing with the plan of a mate on a1, but it also combines that idea with a different idea to cover the escaping square. So go ahead and pause the video, give yourself a couple minutes, and I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Welcome back. If you found it, I am amazed at your tactical skills. Great job. If you just want to enjoy the video, the spectacular sacrifice here is the rook sacrifice, rook to e2. It is completely an unintuitive move. It's not obvious at all. But the idea is deflection. So this rook move, obviously the rook has to be captured. If the rook is not captured, then in the next move the checkmate will come. So bishop takes e2 is forced. But now this bishop has been deflected from the critical square e4. And the next move for black is knight to e4. Attacking the queen, but more importantly, covering the escape square on d2. And now the king has nowhere to run. So no matter what, in the next couple of moves, white will be checkmated. Really the only way white can delay the checkmate is to sacrifice the queen on g7. But, you know, short of that, the mate in 1 is coming. So maybe, you know, queen to g7 king takes g7. Okay, yeah, you can give another check here with bishop to c3, but that's nothing. And then in the next move, really no matter what, black will play queen a1 and checkmate the white squared pair. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was a complex idea, and you notice how the themes fit together. So first of all, the move bishop a3 destabilizes white's position, and after knight to a4, then you have capturing the pawn, setting up the double threat after queen to a3, threatening simultaneously a mate in 1 and a mate in 2. And these threats are not possible to be defended at the same time. So after queen takes a2 and bishop to e1, really the idea to checkmate the king becomes obvious once you realize that this is the only escape square. And you just ask yourself, how can you cover this square? Well, if the knight were to be on e4, the square obviously would be blocked, but knight e4 right away is impossible because bishop will just capture the knight. So you sacrifice the rook to position the bishop to a different square for one move, but that's enough. And after bishop takes the knight and knight to e4, now the checkmate becomes inescapable. It is really quite a beautiful combination and an illustration of how all of these tactical themes can fit together in one game. In our next lesson, we will continue to explore the various tactical themes, and I will teach you how to see them when you look at a position. So until next time, and I hope you enjoyed these two small demonstrations. Have fun, guys, and Konstantin out.